All right, up next we have Tish Shute from Futureway Technologies. All right, Tish's fan right over there. She is the Director of Spatial Computing at Futureway, working at the intersection of science and technology and design to shape the future of computing and communications. Currently, she's focused on the new web for spatial computing and open source initiatives, like the Rust and Web assembly, which are bringing the performance capabilities needed for spatial computing previously only available to native apps. Let's give a warm welcome to Tish.
Hi, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here today. I'm going to talk today about something I'm calling a web of perception and shared context. But first, I'm Director of AR/VR for Futureway Technologies and actually co-founded this event with Ori. And I want to start with a thank you for Ori for taking this event to where it is today and taking it through the last very difficult time for in-person events. So thank you, Ori. Please note that the opinions in this talk are mine and do not represent any organization or company. Oh, my clicker. Ha ha ha. Is there another clicker? Ah, yes, sorry. Oh, yes, okay. Whoops, slow clicker too. Rethinking AR/VR. In 2010, we met in this building, and the theme of the event, which was then called Augmented Reality Event, was from design fiction to design fact. And it's just amazing. We actually have done it. We really, that event, there was some of the world's greatest visionary designers and writers like Bruce Sterling and Will Wright, but we were well in the realm of design fiction. And we are well into the realm of design fact at this point. So it's very exciting. But what do I mean? Rethinking AR/VR, we hear all these terms, XR, spatial computing. And that's why I really, have started to think about it really quite precisely. Now we're in this world of fact. What is it? It's a web of perception and shared context. And essentially, the fundamental to AR is this real-time shared sense-making between humans and machines. And, I think it's really very important now we're in the world of design fact to, bring this up front. And I think this clicker's a little slow. So it's a web for devices that see. That's essentially what we're talking about here. And as all our devices are beginning to be able to see. I mean, certainly our phones can see. Farm machinery is so interesting. I mean, farm machinery can now actually use computer vision to detect the weeds, to pull the weeds. We are really on the brink of a time when a great partnership between human beings and machines. And of course, our glasses will see. And, it's been a very difficult last couple of years for the hardware industry, but there's amazing innovation, and the glasses are looking very good. And of course, the vehicles and the traffic lights and the phones. It's a web for devices that see. So early AR browsers, and hands up anyone who was here in the day of yay, so you will remember these. But essentially, our devices didn't see very well. In fact, we all struggled really hard to sort of approximate some form of seeing. So basically, the idea was to bring resources from elsewhere in the digital ecosystem into our, an AR experience. So on the left, I think people who've been around a while will remember the AR browser layer. And on the right, this was a way to find out which subway entrance was correct. So that's early AR browsers. But today, our devices and our phones and our glasses and the cars and the farm machinery, they have come of age. And this seeing is actually quite incredible, because it's actually dynamic seeing and sense making. If you look at this MIT Spark Lab project, you will really see this use of dynamic scene graphs to give actionable perception in real time. So what does this mean? I mean, this means to me that we must really start thinking of really reinventing game engines for AR and VR as an OS for real-time sense making. And to do this on the open web, now the project from MIT is a proprietary code, that's the grand challenge. And that's essentially the topic of my talk today. So, an open web of perception can bring AI and computer vision in the public sphere. I mean, AR is built on computer vision. It's not something that can remain hidden away from what we're doing. We all have to be able to have access. We have to be able to work with it. We have to be able to understand it. AI is always linked to user experience. It's about what all these sense-making devices can do and bring to the user. It's also a full-stack process. And at the moment, I mean, for all the hype, there's very, very few companies who can actually do it. And you know, these very monolithic, huge proprietary approaches are extremely wasteful. It's extremely wasteful of resources. It's duplicating this is just, I mean, insane. And something we've all got to think about when we're in this space that is incredibly energy hungry is we need a web of perception that's thinking about green AI and being green in general. So what I've been thinking about lately is really what would be an open web stack with AI having like, you know, first-class capabilities so that it's transparent to us, efficient, deployable, all the rest of the good things we expect from the web. So this is a very interesting topic because I don't know if anyone here has worked hard in doing WebXR and working in legacy browsers. You will know how hard this is. It's nigh on impossible, but we have done it. But it is really only possible to do lightweight WebXR in that context of within a legacy browser. But just hats off to all the WebXR work that's taken on that grand challenge. Before I go on with the project I'm interested in most, and that is looking at what can we do that's web-like and uses the best qualities of the web, but doesn't trap this wonderful new technology into a legacy browser that was never made for it. And this is a list, I mean, when I say HTML has eaten the web, it's because there used to be a separation between content and presentation. That was very powerful for the web. But now everything is conglommed up with HTML. And that's not going to work for whatever we want to call it, AR, VR, spatial computing, or XR in the future. So I'm really interested in, you know, a new grammar for spatial computing beyond HTML and CSS. Oh, actually, I mean, I missed my megatrends chart. I just put that there because if you look at the megatrends in computing, how are you going to squeeze this into a tiny little world of HTML buried inside a legacy browser? So Gordon Brander, it's really worth reading his work because I think this is really smart. It gives us a direction to think about building new web-like things. Because, you know, what you get with the legacy browser is you get the established network effect, powerful 2D UI, scripting languages that can hot load, untrusted code, all this good stuff, an enormous developer ecosystem. But in the end, we end up with a difficulty. We end up with a technology that was never designed for the way we're thinking about XR, AR, VR now. And if you look at some of the things he lists on the right, it's extraordinarily hard, even if it was technology capable, to deal with this giant legacy piece of code that is the browser that now very few companies in the, I mean, maybe one or two in the world would even take on supporting. So this is Gordon Brander's term for this. It's so good. We need to start thinking about the web as an alphabet for creating web-like things. And I think the first thing to look at, I mean, here, first his quote, building a new browser went from being the easiest thing in the world to being the hardest thing in the world because the web is an evolved system and the API surface is essentially infinite. So, and he's worked in that space. He's not just saying that. So, if you look at it, and if you look at what Tim Berners-Lee said early on, the fundamentals of the web, what makes it so important, its best qualities, are actually most concentrated in the URI and URLs. So these arrangements that we see here, like URLs, HTTP, and HTML, that's the web. But look at the podcasts. Look how podcasts managed in this huge, difficult legacy ecosystem to find a way. And he talks a lot about that, so you can think about it. But so what I'm interested in is, like, can we keep the best qualities of the web open, distributed, not owned, evolvable, secure, linkable, all that good stuff, and get ourselves into a situation that's not, where we're not being contained with AR, VR in this legacy browser that won't support most of what we want to do. So this is, I think, you heard in my introduction, this Rust WebAssembly, and as you know, this is just to keep in mind, we actually have some powerful new additions to the web alphabet. And back to that theme, this is not design fiction anymore. When I first spoke, and there's some people here actually who heard me first speak about a distributed, open approach to AR, there were virtually no tools. We were trying to pull them out of a hat. This is powerful. WebAssembly, if you don't have to just name check it and think about it. If you want to look up, you can see how powerful this is for our space. So, and this again, if you're developers, creators in here, you will know this so well. How the existing technical solutions, we've done, I mean, amazing work to kind of work with them. But popular UI stacks are mostly 2D, and they're not, they're not really suitable. And the game engines, by and large, are too heavy. I mean, I would just name check one of these projects, because O3DE is rather special, because it is fully open source, and Amazon open sourced it earlier this year, and it's very early. It remains to be seen whether it could be modularized in a way that would be, quite useful to this space. So this is a project that I've been watching for the last couple of years. It is really, I mean, again, suggest you try it out, because, this is really a UI stack for people who are interested not just in, spatial computing, AR and VR, but in its essence, in its live collaboration, in its real-timeness. And I just, when you have time, this is a glimpse of where we can go with this. The entwinement, the entanglement of the Web 3.0 and Web 3 are the things that are getting all entangled, and there's very few people probably. Anyone in this room want to give me a definition of either Web 3 and Web 3.0 and their difference? That's how entangled and crazy they are. But this is really quite an interesting time. I think Yori made a joke about, the only business model now is, I've got NFTs, right? But this is really fundamental, these shifts. The shift of, as I see it, very simplified, the shift of Web 3 is to decentralized finance. And that is why, it's really about how can we oxygenate, how can we make new economies for creators and developers in these new spaces. Web 3.0 is a much older term that was for the intelligent web, the AI and spatial computing all came in. This is not, we're in the frontier stage, and you know what frontiers are like. It's the good, the bad, and the ugly, and all the rest. But there's no stopping this train. This train has left the station. So this is the key for me of why you want something called a web, and something that uses some of these qualities of the web that are most significant. It's about fairness, it's about accessibility, and it's about bringing these powerful tools of computing. It's the future of computing. I didn't actually dwell on this in an early slide, but reality is now becoming the platform for computing. And computer vision is fundamental to that. These tools need to be accessible. They need to be available. So that's really what's motivating a lot of this thinking at the moment for me. And as I said at the beginning, what is the sort of mission of the web of perception? It really is going to, open an era of a completely new relationship between humans and machines. Once we have shared perception, when we can begin to meet on this, through computer vision and sense, real-time sense making, it opens up an entirely new space for human-machine collaboration. These are just some of the things, and many, many more. And again, this is, when we talk web-like, it introduces these kind of questions center stage. That's why we have many organizations where, for the web, where people come together and decide these things together. So, we have to think about this together. How can users be in control of all this computer vision and all these devices that see? Who gets to display what in what context? Who gets to interact with objects? Who gets what are manipulated objects? How do you know they've been manipulated? And what are future interactions? So that's why the web is a powerful place to build these, the idea of the web I'm talking about, web-like things I'm mostly talking about today. So this is a project. By the way, there are many, many projects in this space. I haven't been able to put them in this presentation today. You look at Rust game engines, there's just so much. But this project, I really suggest, follow the link. This is Anselm Hook, who was involved with AWE right at the beginning too. He's been in this space a very long time. And this is, he's working on this grammar. He's working on this web-like approach. And he's documented it all, and it's all open, and it's an amazing opportunity at the beginning of something to get involved. So I hope, this conversation, it's just a beginning, and I really hope we make this grow big. It's, we've gone from design fiction to design fact, now we've got to go big with our facts. This is my final slide, and I have to say, this, the presenter right before me, that was just so much amazing content. It was really amazing. And she ended up on this, it's a very, I have a very utopian motivation for this. There's, obviously, we're all well aware of the dystopian views of AI and AR, but I think this poem by Richard Brautigan from 1967 actually captures what's driven me for my whole career in this space. So I'll read you one verse, but I won't torture you with the whole thing because time is up. So, all watched over by machines of loving grace. I like to think, and the sooner the better, of a cybernetic meadow where animals, mammals, and computers live together in mutually programming harmony, like pure water touching a clear sky. To me, this is what we're about. We're not about technology. We're about a new harmony between machines and humans, between machines and nature. And my hope for this technology of a web of perception is it becomes a significant player in dealing with our global problem of climate change. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tish. That was really special. I love the deep dive, the real full stack analysis you provided there. There's a lot going on. I was a fan of Layer way back when. I want to say 2007, maybe, or something like that. Yeah. Some of their early projects. I think they're back. The original Layer people bought the name back. And
it'd be great if they were here. I'll say hi. But it's really an exciting moment, I think, because we've come a long way in more than 10 years.
Indeed. Any questions for Tish?
Hello, thank you. So I completely agree, right? Like if we look at what we want, especially conversations of metaverse today, a version of that is inspired on the open web is ideal, right? However, if you look at what's happening today in the ground, so we are seeing a movement towards the Roblox of the world and the Fortnites of the world, but translated to AR, where there is, these walled garden metaverses, right? And then we might end up with the Facebook metaverse and the Fortnite metaverse and the Google metaverse. How do we avoid that? I mean, it's just much faster to build that way. And second, if you know who's making progress in that direction, what are the 2-3 companies that we should be looking at?
Mm-hmm. Well, first, I mean, and that's why I brought up sort of Gordon Brander's articles, I think these web-like things are actually a recipe for how you disrupt those monolithic models. So you can dig in. He likes to talk about podcasts and that. But I would have said, I agree, that's what the difference between sort of 2010 and now is we have the tools to do this. And not only that, not this community just, but I would say the open source developer community, people working in Rust and WebAssembly who are not necessarily that connected to this, because remember when I said there's a whole entanglement now of, Web3, which is basically, the P2P stuff, and, new tools like Rust. People are actually already doing this, quite frankly. And if the theory of, Gordon puts forward, these web-like things actually have a real power to bypass this issue of the network effects that you don't have and building up an ecosystem. But I do agree, but to me, I suppose my whole career has been about this. I mean, I think Patrick's here, he knows I talked here 11 years ago, actually arguing the importance of this, but there were no tools. So, I mean, so far we've lived in the last 10 years where basically 5 or 6 computers / companies, because essentially they're like one computer, have pretty much sort of, we've been following that conversation. I think that, I mean, we've seen all the problems with that. It's only going to get worse. So eventually, hopefully, people understand there's better ways to do this. But I think this is being done. This is being built, this new approach to the web that will make some of these technologies and more fair and create new economies. I think we're at a very early stage with all this. So the NFTs come across as like, right now in some areas. When you see people just tacking them on as a business model, that's really not very interesting. But this whole change, this sort of where Web 3.0 and Web 3 kind of come together and fall out, that's hugely interesting. So, I think that I mean, it's very hard to say. We've been in very uncertain times. So, I never like to say anything too perky, but I feel very optimistic, actually. I do. I feel a mere hope from 2010 has actually become realizable. So I'm optimistic.
Hi.
Hi, Patrick.
Is this on?
I'm not sure if it's on, actually.
All right, well, there it is, okay. I totally 100% think this is the direction we need to go. What I'm curious about is if you see any of the hardware going to a web-centric headset, which I think, ultimately,
that's a great question,
ultimately
Patrick.
would be required for this to
Now
really
that's
be in our daily lives,
yes,
right?
And that, I mean, it's interesting because you don't know how uber geeky to get in these kind of things, but the piece of conversation I missed out about WebAssembly is, even in its most early forms, we can deploy Orbital, for example, straight to any number of AR glasses, which are, I mean, people have been struggling with the last 2 years and the supply chains and all of the difficulties, but they exist. I just actually saw an open source hardware project from Finland, but even all of the others could, through WebAssembly, very quickly adopt these platforms that we're presenting. Tomorrow wouldn't take very much, because WebAssembly is like a universal solvent almost. So I think that's what's exciting. And to be honest, I mean, just to let you know what motivates me too, something I saw in the last 5 years, which made me a little sad, was the amazing innovation in hardware all over the world. It was just amazing to see. And of course, everyone got kind of beaten down by the pandemic and the supply chains. But the heavy lifting was done, in my opinion, and the hardware is just, again, if you take 2010, when we gathered in the Avatar to look at like some very creaky eyewear, oh my God, we got it. We got it in the bag. So yeah, I mean, I'm optimistic. It's interesting.
I think we have time for one more question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I wanted to ask you about the QR code. When the QR code first came out, you had to download a QR code reader app separately from your phone.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, only then, could you access whatever content was behind that QR code.
Yes.
I'm wondering what and when large OEMs might start supporting, because that's what we've seen with the QR code, is now your default camera app that comes loaded on your device knows what a QR code and can launch you into a URL right away. When, or are you hopeful that we'll get something like that for persistently placed content around the world? Because this is such a huge...
Really glad you asked that question, because it's, again, something I kind of glided over in my presentation. What I'm looking at, if you know me, you know I'm not into the point clouds in the sky and one big computer having all the data. These projects I'm talking about, they're all about creativity at the edge. They're all about just in time or even ahead of time. And that project that I showed from MIT is about dynamic perception. So I'm talking about a model which is much more accessible than this idea the hardware companies or some big computer company has to do it for us. This is about these tools, right? Real-time computer vision, sense making, gesture recognition, being deployable at the edge, just in time. So, obviously the proof of the pudding's in the eating and all of the performance issues, but that's the model I'm saying. I think people should be able to understand it very clearly for AR and perhaps robotics applications. It makes no sense to be storing the data up in the cloud in the sky. The data is always real world, and this is a term I quickly glanced over. When reality is in the platform for computing, reality is always changing. Forget the stuff up in the the big old database. This is actionable perception. So and again, this is kind of a uber geeky talk that you probably could have in a developer track, but that's the power of these new additions to the web alphabet. That's essentially, so thank you for answering that question, because obviously, to me, that's actually a core of what I'm talking about.
Thank you for asking that question for me, too. I wanted to hear her response to that.
Yeah.
Being in retail, our product designers hate QR codes because they're kind of ugly when they have this beautiful thing that they've spent a lot of time designing. But I like to get the app out of the way. I want users just to jump in and be able to see something in AR. And I fantasize about ways we can implement something without the QR code, like some kind of library that was stored on the phone. I'm not sure. I think Tish would have a better idea on how to execute on that.
I mean,
It's sort of imagine you've got all of these computer vision modules that you can deploy as needed. So, in a web-like way. And that's what our existing technologies can give us right now. I wasn't even close in 2020. We were dreaming then of these technologies. So I think, but I do agree the QR code took ages, considering how useful it was.
Yeah, it's only become ubiquitous now, and so I'm wondering how long.
I think 1997 from Toyota, if my memory serves correct, where
Yeah.
QR came out of.
Sounds right.
Excuse me?
Dentsu.
Dentsu, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, but what's interesting about, tech and society is things change. And things can change actually quite fast. It was interesting because I was going to get another quote I didn't use, but Bruce Sterling said in 2010, it's 9 a.m. in the augmented reality industry. Without vision, people die. We need to bake a big pie. And I think I've always had lots of vision, but this is the first year I can say we have the tools. All of them, really. I mean, obviously they're very emerging. So I'm pretty optimistic.
Me too. Thank you so much, Tish.
you.
That was lovely. So that's a wrap for right now. We're going to take a break, and we're going to be back at 11:20 with a session on the business of the metaverse. It should be very exciting, moderated by Greg Catano. See you back then.